Hello and welcome to this year's Commemoration. It's great to see you all back again after the COVID pandemic. The last 2 years have been really tough on us all. We did manage to lay flowers here in 2020 as wreaths were unavailable at the time. In 2021 we had a joint commemoration with the government and we managed to get some of you in to visit the monument after the commemoration. Unfortunately it was by very limited numbers and by rotation. First off, I'd like to thank the following people. Liam Grace for all his hard work in the background over the years for helping us organise the commemoration. Des White for his brilliant research and articles. Jerry Cassidy, our photographer. Joe Lee and Jim Dolan for all their filming and editing work. Mark Toner and the various pipers we've had over the years from the Dublin Fire Brigade Band for the piping. Tony and the staff of the Customs House and the OPW for looking after us every year. This year we see another centenary. It is a centenary of great sadness. It's definitely the darkest period of the revolutionary years. It would be easy to bury our heads and ignore it, but we feel the best thing to do is to remember all the men who took part in the burning of the Customs House and who fought in the Civil War. In fact, several of them lost their lives. Over the next few months, you will see and hear plenty about the Civil War. What is needed is a balanced view and discussion on the Civil War. That includes the good and the bad. That was done by both sides, not a one-sided view leaving out the parts that don't suit an agenda. This year we have changed things around a little. We're going to lay just one wreath at the monument. The wreath will be laid by Conor, Flood and Winnie Doyle. Winnie's grandfather was Billy Doyle. Billy took part in the burning of the Custom House as a member of the ASU. He later took part in the takeover of Beggar's Bush. He later joined the Four Courts garrison and fought in the Battle of Dublin with the anti-treaty forces. Conor is the grandson of Tom Flood, who also fought at the Customs House with the ASU, and later fought in the Civil War with the pro-treaty side. Conor's great-uncle Ed Flood also took part in the burning of the Customs House. He is also the great-nephew of Frank Flood, who was executed by the British in Mountjoy in 1921. And not forgetting his brothers Sean and Peter Flood. In fact, all 8 Flood brothers were involved in the War of Independence. Now, Winnie's going to go up and do her first speech.
It is an honour and a privilege to be here today on behalf of the Doyle family to commemorate my granddad Billy Doyle and his comrades who took part in the burning of the Custom House in pursuit of Irish freedom for us all. Billy was arrested after the burning and sent to Arbor Hill and eventually to Kilmainham, along with most of the Custom House men. After his release, Billy was back with the ASU and enlisted in the New Army in 1922. He appeared in the famous photo taken at Beggar's Bush on the 4th of February. Billy agonised over his allegiance to the pro-treaty side and eventually resigned to rejoin the anti-treaty side and was involved in the Battle of the Four Courts. Looking back now, his decision must have been a very difficult one, as he had been involved in so much activity with the very men who would end up attacking the Four Courts. Much of his time in the fight for freedom was lost to us when he passed away. Like a lot of Irish households back then, the subject was never really discussed or talked about. Even though Billy tried to tell his story numerous times over the years, it had become such a taboo subject after the Civil War that no one really listened. This is why I am so grateful for all the hard work in the Custom House group have done in researching each of the Custom House men. I was aware my granddad had a military background, as my dad in latter years had loaned Billy's medals, a photo and an autograph book to Kilmainham jail. Liz Gillis contacted my dad about them while she was writing a book called The Fall of Dublin, and this made me determined to find out more about my granddad's background. Unfortunately, my dad passed away in 2011 and never got to see just how much his dad had actually been involved in. But I've continued the research on his behalf and today will lay a wreath in honour of Grandad Billy and the brave Custom House men. Thanks to each and every one of you today and thanks to all the brave Custom House men. I leave the last words to my Grandad Billy, quoted from his entries in 2 of the autograph books kept by the men in Kilmainham jail. Waiting to see old Ireland free, and here's to the dauntless daughters of Erin. Go raibh míle maith agat.
I have an enormous sense of pride as I stand here today, representing my father Tom Flood and acknowledging the critical role his father and my grandfather Thomas L. Flood, alongside his 7 brothers, undertook in the fight for Irish freedom. two brothers, Sean and Frank Flood, sacrificed their lives as part of their participation in that rightful fight. Frank Flood was captured at the Drumcondra ambush on the 21st of January 1921, was sentenced to death for treason and executed on the 14th of March 1921. He was one of a group now known as the Forgotten 10 who were executed by hanging. Sean Flood, head of IRA operations during 1921 in England, was arrested following an attempt to free Frank Carty of the Sligo Brigade in Glasgow on the 4th of May 1921, and subsequently was imprisoned in Peterhead Prison, Scotland, along with 9 of his comrades, now known as the Peterhead 10. There he served 5 years of hard labour. He was tortured both mentally and physically by the British and died soon after his release due to severe ill health. It is pertinent now that I would like to thank Linda Barry McManus and pay tribute to her uncle, volunteer Joseph Reynolds, South Leitrim Brigade, who was imprisoned with Sean Flood in Peterhead. Linda generously shared information and pictures of Sean Flood with me and helped the Flood family build our proud family history. The remaining 5 brothers were Eddie, who took part in the Customs House operation. Valentine, Harold, Peter and Alfie Flood also played their part in the struggle for Irish freedom and helped build our nation and state. Now I will briefly share with you how the events of 101 years ago at the Customs House shaped my own family. My grandmother, Peg Milan, was working in the Customs House when the attack took place. My grandfather, Tom Flood, and Peg began a romance and later married in 1926, having first set eyes on each other during the activities that day. In later life, my grandfather often joked that if he knew what was in store for him in married life, he would have done a better job at the Customs House. They loved each other. Thank God for sending us the brave men and women who fought and died for Irish freedom. Let us remember those freedom fighters who lost their lives during the Customs House attack. Volunteer Dan Head, volunteer Edward Dorrans, volunteer Sean Doyle, and brothers Lieutenant Stephen O'Reilly and Captain Patrick O'Reilly. Also the 4 civilians who lost their lives. They were Francis Davis, Mahan Lawless, James Connolly and John Byrne. May their souls rest in peace alongside all men and women who sacrificed their lives so that all here today and across Ireland can live freely and confidently as we inch closer towards a 32-county republic. Finally, I thank Gary Deering and Jerry Cassidy for welcoming me into the Commemoration group. I am proud to be part of a group celebrating the memory of those days. Lastly, a big thank you to the staff of the Customs House today who have facilitated our commemoration each year. And to quote De Valera, "Is air the tallest star, nor irucht kun idyllicus a buintamach." History is about striving for ideals. Gur míle maith agat.
Thank you, Conor. Thanks, Winnie. Now, I'd just like to call for a 1-minute silence as we remember all those who fought and died here 101 years ago today. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to call the commemoration to an end now. I look forward to seeing you all again next year. Again, thanks very much for turning up. Oh, sorry, Jerry's telling me to ask you all up on the steps to stay there for the group photograph. It's not long. It's 3 years since we've done this, so we do forget.